Welcome to the jungle. We're going to talk economics. We're going to talk a little bit about what's going on with the economy and millennials. I think I wrote a pretty accurate title there. I've told you several times that there are a couple sites I think are worth bookmarking. One of them is marketticker.org. There's a hyphen between market and ticker. Ann Barnhart, whom I like her writing. She cites it a lot. It's written by a guy named Carl Denninger, whose big book in terms of what people talk about is called Leverage. I have not read it. I should read it. There are a lot of books I should read. I'm reading The Grapes of Wrath right now by John Steinbeck. Very good. I mean, I know he's a liberal. I know he's a socialist, but that's almost incidental to the book. You almost ignore that part. It's just such a great description of life in the 1930s for a devastated Oklahoma family, one of many devastated Oklahoma families at the time. And, it's better to read about it than to have had lived that life. But a lot here. I'm going to probably go a little longer than usual simply because there are so many good comments here that, let's be honest, you're not going to hear otherwise. I mean, very few of you actually take the trouble to read the comments. I'm reading you the best of them. I think I add value that way. So let's get to what Carl Denninger wrote. Not even that long an essay here. It's called Maybe the Snowflakes Are Right. Okay, I think he's using the term snowflake in a very general way to describe really all millennials. We're not talking about the oversensitive type. He uses it more generically. And this is by Carl Denninger, again, at marketticker.org. He starts off by saying, what if Pajama Boy is right? Pajama Boy, just Google it. It's the reference to that insufferable little brat a couple years ago in the Obamacare ad around Christmas. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. I guess probably 2.5 years ago, maybe 3.5. GDP came in pretty punky this morning, and a big part of it was consumption, consumer spending. Much has been said, including by myself, about millennials and other young people on both sides of the millennial generation being less ambitious, living at home even well into their 20s, working part-time or not at all. What if their decision is a purely logical one? And full disclosure, I did study economics undergrad. Not that I particularly excelled in it, which is a good thing given that I went to Harvard undergrad and they're so Keynesian. But, I do tend to think about a lot of things as trade-offs in economic terms. It's just the way I am. But so this really appealed to me. And I think it's written well enough and it raises enough issues that it should appeal to you. But back to what he wrote. What if their decision is a purely logical one? What if those folks have decided that they're not into rocket science, e.g. high-grade math, computer programming, etc., the STEM subjects, and are not going to go to some college to blow $50,000 or more they don't have because older adults have jacked up the cost by 500%? And you may want to check out my midday report about about Purdue University buying Kaplan University, which is somewhat related to this. It's going to change things a lot. Denninger continues, what if they see you trying to them up the ass? I can say ass here. I can say the other word too. It's just at a certain point I draw a line. In short, and are simply refusing to play. What if they've decided that they might as well get stoned, get drunk, or just cruise on through life and accept less because they know you rig things against them, you intend to, and are trying to screw them and they see through it? In short, what if their decision is actually logical and it's your fault because you have sat on your ass while the medical and educational systems have turned into financial rape rooms? You allowed the FASFA to come into play. You allowed colleges and the government to define anyone unmarried under 24 as not independent and demanded parental income and asset reports for someone who's an actual adult. And so what if they saw you treat them like children in colleges, in government, and in everyday life? They can do the math and realize you voted to spend the money more than once, and thus your pensions are all broke. You sat on your ass while healthcare went from 3% of the economy to 19.x%, doing nothing to stop it, and you also colluded with their high school teachers and counselors to remove any sort of encouragement or curricular support for anything but a university at $20,000 plus a year, even if where said student's interest lies simply isn't in a field that makes $100,000 a year for decades, if ever, and said in response, okay, you want to financially me? That way? You. What if I'm right even a little? What if I'm right a lot? What are you going to do about it? You can't force people to work, You can't force them to strive. You can't force them to innovate. It appears that those who are a bit older have a choice to make. We either put a stop to the financial rape room games in our economy aimed at young people right damn now, or the rot that is building will ultimately destroy us when the government funding assumptions collapse. And this is something that Carl Denninger, who is a libertarian, writes about a lot. And then he concludes with, still think you can sit and swill beer over the weekend, eh? Better think again. Well, I don't know what that means, really. And it actually reminded me of the Grapes of Wrath, where Steinbeck, who was a socialist, is talking about how, the masses of people are going to come together, and they're going to show the landowner someday. It really hasn't happened yet. Okay, the real reason I wanted to put this up is not to give my opinion. Again, I have opinions on things, but I think I add the most value when I treat myself as sort of a librarian, conveyor of information. Look, I don't even need to think about this because there's so much good stuff that was already written about by other people that you didn't see yet, and I'm just going to bring them to you. And it's in the comment section. I'm not bothering like giving every person's name or avatar because it doesn't matter. Just know that I didn't come up with this myself, and I'm not trying to pass it off as such. I usually mention when I do. Okay, let's get to it. A lot of these are really good. First up, had to join just to comment on this prescient ticker. Carl has nailed it. I drive limos and party buses and have had this exact conversation with dozens of millennials. They're always astonished that a boomer like me gets it. Next comment that I selected. My trekking group is almost all millennials, and we've had numerous discussions about this stuff. And there is truth in your premise. This is a summary of my perception of their attitudes. I grew up in the 80s, the era when Wall Street was admired and being a yuppie was considered a noble aspiration. The millennials, they hate that yuppie stuff. They hate Wall Street. They hate corporate America. They think they're all a bunch of crooked, greedy By the way, I don't know what the word that's blocked out there is. It's just a bunch of asterisks and an S. So that could mean a lot of things. I guess maybe assholes? We can say assholes here, right? No, I'd love to see what they say about malpractice lawyers and the people who have billboards up, especially this guy on the Gulf of Mexico. What's his name? Alexander Shunara. You know, no one ever mentions those types. I mean, they're... I won't get into that. But malpractice attorneys, if you are around Mississippi, Alabama, the Panhandle of Florida, you know exactly what I'm talking about with those Alexander Shunara billboards. Not even a good picture of them. They're ubiquitous. That's a word to Google if you don't know it. All right. He continues. Actually, this is the same commenter. I have millennial friends who have nice budding white-collar careers in corporate America, and they play this down and even avoid talking about it around other millennials for fear of being seen as a sellout to the corporate oligarchy. I don't think they are unwilling to work out of some sense of intentional attack against prior generations. I think it's more that in the midst of their financial meltdown, they hold Wall Street and corporate America in zero effing esteem. And I think they are willing to work, but the jobs that they hold in high esteem are for companies that they perceive as not being a part of old school corporate America, like tech companies. For example, if one of them got a gig at a tech company, they'd be admired. If they expressed that they wanted to pursue a corner office at Wells Fargo, they'd be ridiculed. They're comfortable with gig work. They're comfortable with personal austerity. The concept of roommates is much more accepted at older ages with them than it was for my generation. Instead of bragging about how nice a car they own, they brag about how they are losing to get around without one. They use Uber frequently, and many of them drive for Uber, etc. They are predominantly Bernie Sanders types, I guess, without the nice, expensive lake house that Comrade Bernie just got very quickly after he dropped out of the primary and didn't cause any more problems. But that's just me saying that. I had a very specific conversation with one of them who actually has a business degree and some sort of financial literacy about the economics involved with his political leanings. I specifically asked, all these handouts that Bernie offered, free tuition, single-payer, health care, etc., how are all these initiatives supposed to be funded given the government's fiscal position? His response, they'll get the funding for those demands from the same source that they get funding from for all the bailout subsidies and pork they give to banks and corporations. They'll borrow for it. I followed up saying that this is patently unsustainable and will blow up the country's finances. His response was to the effect of, it already is unsustainable. If someone is going to rob your safe, are you going to sit back and let them take stuff? Or are you going to put up a fight to get your stuff back? I guess the real appropriate analogy or metaphor here would be, just don't bother having stuff. I think that's what he really means. Continuing with this one commenter. These folks watch the TV news and hear about how great the country is doing, how high the stock market is, how real estate is such a great investment, etc. But in their personal lives, I sense they have a complete disconnect from this narrative. It's pretty scary. Let me just put in a personal pitch. I'm doing a show called Backlash now on a brand new thing called Shark Nation Radio. The shark part isn't that I'm a shark, but really the part of the Florida coast where I am, here and from down here in the Daytona area to New Smyrna Beach, probably a little bit up toward Jacksonville too. It is known, at least to us, as the Shark Coast because, well, you got to be a little nervous when you go in the water around sunrise and sunset. Probably not. You're probably more likely to be hit by lightning, though we haven't had a good storm here in a while. That's why there's a drought. But Shark Nation Radio, you may want to look it up on YouTube or, for that matter, sharknationradio.com, Facebook. You can get the app on Google. You can get the app on Android, etc. And one thing's going slightly viral already, part of my interview with Ben Shapiro that aired earlier today. That is where I talk about how he's like, remember the crazy ass honey badger, that video a few years ago? Well, that's the part that's most popular, but you can see a bunch of videos. Continuing on with this discussion of economics and millennials. Another great comment. I am an older millennial, born in '83. I got the memo during the tech boom, and then again, wait, if you were born in '83, are you a millennial? Then you'd be 33, 34 now. I don't know. I'm definitely not one. I am an older millennial, born in '83. I got the memo during the tech boom and then again during the 07-08 mess. The younger crowd gets it more than old folks think. So those boomers are going to get quite the surprise. YOLO, Y-O-L-O. I don't know if that's used ironically because it became uncool, in my opinion, as soon as Barack Obama said it one time. Another comment. The snowflakes have gone galt. If you don't know what gone galt means, just Google it. I'm not going to tell you. You should know what that means. G-A-L-T, gone galt. G-O-N-E, and I only say that because I know I have a thick Philadelphia accent with certain vowels. So if you don't know gone galt, you got to know what that means, and I'm not going to tell you. So this comment, once more, is the snowflakes have gone galt. Maybe humans are pretty rational after all. Going on, the snowflakes may not be the sharpest knives in the drawer, but they're not effing retarded. They may not see everything with the same scope and context that we do, but they know enough to not play a game where the rules are stacked against them. Maybe not all, to be certain, but enough to have an impact. The fun starts here in the next year or so, when the boomers have to start selling off and withdrawing from their IRAs. The kids are just not going to be there on the buy side. At least not in the numbers needed to keep the debt and equity markets from going into reverse. Time that with the big ugly lesson in exponents our host has warned us about, and the big McMansions the geezers will need to unload with fewer prospective buyers in a higher interest rate environment, and well, things will get interesting. Another comment. People behave as if TANSTAAFL, I don't know what that stands for, is capitalism's great platitude. Maybe if I had 30 seconds I could think it through, but I'm not going to do that to you right now. I wonder what that is. I suspect it may be capitalism's great warning. No such thing as a free lunch. Oh, sure, you can sell out your children's and grandchildren's future, but there's no such thing as a free lunch. You will pay in the end. Be it lost productivity, a generation of failure to launch adults who wouldn't recognize a profit motive if it bit them in the arse, being slathered in barbecue sauce, or just dumped, I think that's a comment about cannibalism, or just dumped in a nursing home with all the care you once dumped at the daycare center. The bill comes due. Credentialism, licensing schemes, nepotism, buddy hiring, and we want to call ourselves a meritocracy, and believe me, I have the Ivy League background. I'm not a snob about it. I'm just wary. I just am a little more familiar with it than most, so I'm probably warier of those types than most. A lot of them, I don't know, man. It's going to be interesting on my 25th reunion in about a year or so. And we want to call ourselves a meritocracy. Entrepreneurship is down. With all the gatekeeping strangling new business in the cradle, we can rest assured that no one is harming our long-established market players. But where is the innovation and job creation? Well, we ate them at a free lunch. We still want to protect our pile of stuff. Why would we endanger our personal pile of stuff to protect someone else's pile of stuff? It's not our problem, it's their problem. Someone wants to take from them, we do nothing because we believe we can still live in a world where people will do the right thing so long as we personally never have to sacrifice to make that world happen. It'll happen for free, so long as everyone else does what is right while we are busy protecting our pile. Turns out we can't outsource doing the right thing. Either we want to live in a world where justice exists, where choices and free markets exist, or we don't want to badly enough to make it reality. The biggest lie we can tell ourselves in this moment is that if it is not bothering me right now, it isn't my problem. Me today, you tomorrow. Watch what the world becomes when everyone thinks civility and free markets are someone else's problem. You'll wind up living in a world where civility is non-existent, no one is free, and now it's your problem because no one cares because your problems are yours. And don't you dare touch my pile. And that is very much, like a lot of you probably read The Grapes of Wrath in high school or middle school, probably high school, and forgot it, but I've been reading it lately. I'm about halfway through, and this is definitely what the former preacher who travels with them says as sort of, Steinbeck's own opinion. But if anyone has comments about The Grapes of Wrath, I welcome them because it's always fun to hear them when I'm in the middle of a book. But I emphasize, read the books by Herman Wouk because he's going to turn 102 at the end of May. Continuing with the comments. As someone who is in higher ed, the facts that I see here on the ground are that you can drop the if and that you are right somewhere in between a little and a lot. Headed toward a lot. Enrollment in business and computer science at my university is holding up pretty well, while enrollment in the social sciences is tanking hard. The majority of students and their parents are looking at the costs and looking at what majors can get jobs that make it worthwhile. All right, good. At my university, that means business or computer science with a couple of others thrown in and not much else. I would not be surprised to see some faculty in the social sciences lose their job in the next 3 to 5 years, or at a minimum see no replacements for retirees. Good, because a lot of them are practically all liberals. Later on in that same person's comment, I left a lot of it out. The young see themselves getting stuck with this load of crap and figure they might as well get some benefit while they can. Also, it seems to me that this generation has made a big change from the previous one, and especially from us boomers. Perhaps a telling point is that many of these kids, including mine, don't seem to be in a rush to get their driver's license. Perhaps this is just a symptom of their refusal to assume all the debt that the previous generations want to pass on to them. I was going to end my post with the above, but I'm going to add one more thought. This especially pertains to higher ed, but I think also extends to just about everything else. The party is already winding down pretty quickly, but the vast majority of the partygoers think that it is still going strong. By the way, this is me being weird, bringing up music, but a weird thought I once had at karaoke. You can kind of interchange the lyrics to "The Party's Over" by Willie Nelson. You know that song? Turn out the lights, the party's over. They say that all good things must end, which was often said by Don Meredith when a game was pretty much locked up on Monday Night Football years ago. You can exchange that with the party song by Kesha and Pitbull, Timber. Like the same number of syllables. It's going down, I'm yelling timber, which is kind of metaphoric for what we're talking about here. You could actually say, you could sing the party's over into Timber's melody and vice versa. Let me try it. Turn out the lights, the party's over. They say that all good things must end, or alternatively, it's going down, I'm yelling timber. You better move, you better dance. All right, enough of that. Had to give you a little intermission. Continuing with the comments about this very serious economic issue. It needs to crash and burn. It's not just the boomers. The generation before them made sure they got theirs. The welfare critters in both state and federal government need to be purged. What do they do other than eat the young? What do they actually do other than eat the young? Government is way bloated with these welfare critters that don't do... They're just keeping it afloat long enough for them to get theirs before they go. Why the F do we need 535 welfare cases running our government? That would be Congress. I'd like to know how these a-holes contribute to GDP. What the hell do they produce? And they get free health care for doing nothing but kneeling before their corporate masters. It needs to crash and burn. Then the truly strong will rise to the top. Another commenter. Many of them were taught to reject the financial F-room, financial enslavement model. My boys, for instance, want no part of buying into the consumerist, materialist America. I think that part of our economy is a dead man walking. In a weird way, their generation seems to have adopted a Stoic, Seneca, that's the Roman, who I guess was known for Stoicism, kind of lifestyle. Probably without thinking about it too much, but maybe I sell them short. They work gigs and part-time jobs to get what they need, but they aren't willing to enslave themselves to accumulate stuff beyond that. At the same time, many of them seem enticed by the Bernie come get your free message. Do they understand that someone is being saddled and chained to pay for that free Amen. And I think about that with healthcare because, my dad's a radiologist retiring in like 2 months, and he's worked hard his whole life and worked hard in an early age to get in the position where he could be a radiologist. My brother-in-law too. And it's as if like healthcare is a natural right. Someone has to go in and sacrifice all those years to learn the skills. That's something I always thought of with the healthcare debate. Okay, is this the millennial saying, no, I won't buy into that model, but I'll let you enslave others if I get stuff? Yeah. Another commenter. I still have quite a bit left. I'm out of here in 15 to 20 minutes if I'm done or not done. But I found so many good comments on this. That's the kind of people who read marketticker.org. That's why you should check it out. Good websites draw good people. Okay. So I hire a fresh grad snowflake for entry-level work. Put her to work doing similar stuff that I did in that position 20 plus years back. She doesn't complain, but her productivity is horse. Turns out she's spending half her time on a smartphone and not working. Have an intervention of sorts, ask what motivates her. Is the work boring, etc.? Nope, she's just not interested in working hard. Literally says that. She will work 10 hours a day but needs a lot of breaks. I explain it's an hourly position and then it doesn't work that way. I get an honest to God answer that we can cut her pay. Me in that position, I would have done almost anything to increase my pay and quite literally worked myself sick just to get a leg up on the guy in the cube next to me. I'm not sure I'd call my snowflake experience getting it, but the millennials certainly are cut from a different cloth. Well, be around immigrants, be around Russians, I think it's a little different there. Another commenter, I think you are giving them too much credit. Not to say some of them don't feel that way, but many have been indoctrinated by socialist curriculum, tethered to social media for the most part, and for the most part the younger kids under 30 have little clue about what is going on around them other than what they hear from their friends and social media who are also in the same thought bubble. I don't want to paint with too broad a brush, though, since I do know and work with several that are not this way. Continuing on, the snowflakes may benefit from this strategy in the short term, but it will not turn out well for them or any of us in the long term. Right now, there doesn't seem to be any downside. Reminds me of the early stages of Carl's lily pod analogy. But what happens when the chickens start to come home to roost? The data I've seen makes me think it is unlikely that many have any significant emergency fund. When things start to go south, how can these folks be very resilient? Again, the grapes of wrath, not that these were simple people, these were farmers. I saw a headline recently. Millennials save for vacation, not retirement. Vacations are a lot more fun than emergency funds and retirement accounts, until you need them. We have a nation of Alfred E. Newman clones. What? Me worry? I would note that for several years there has been a rising voice encouraging skilled trades as an alternative worthy of consideration. And by the way, I think Trump mentioned that on the, it wasn't the main thing he emphasized, but he mentioned that a few times, and I went to a lot of Trump speeches. Encouraging skilled trades as an alternative worthy of consideration. Thomas Friedman came to that conclusion. Thomas Friedman. But every, stop clock is right twice a day. Thomas Friedman came to that conclusion in 2005 in The World is Flat. Mike Rowe of Dirty Jobs fame has been making a solid case for this in the last few years. Both make the point that it is important to be industrious. I add the value of thrifty as necessary. Our fundamental problem is best summarized in a quote that is hard to source. Some attribute it to Tyler, others to de Tocqueville. Reagan was fond of it. I think, was it de Tocqueville? Maybe it was Franklin? I don't know. But democracy cannot exist as a permanent form of government. It can only exist until the people discover they can vote themselves largesse out of the public treasury. From that moment on, the majority always votes for the candidate promising the most benefits from the public treasury, with the result that democracy always collapses over a loose fiscal policy to be followed by a dictatorship. Our constitutional republic is susceptible to this as well. And then here's a response from that same commenter to the snowflakes have gone galt. This country needs to go galt. The only ones who want this globalization horse are the corporations and their kneeling welfare government lackeys. Oh, and throw in that welfare entity called Wall Street. A person should be able to make an honest living and put money away in a simple savings account for retirement. These IRAs are just a way for Wall Street to funnel money to them. And when all the state pensions get terminated, they will still funnel savings to them. Ponzi-nomics is all they know. They don't produce Very good post because, there's another commenter now. Very good post because it questions the status quo and actually reveals why this younger generation isn't taking the status quo seriously. Many of them grew up under Obama and they saw him as a social justice warrior for the little guy. When the new election came around, they chose Bernie as their replacement because he sold the same package of BS. They listened to Obama sell the country on the racism line and made these kids grow up believing that they should be fighting for these injustices that are more made up than real. I can agree with Carl's synopsis that they have watched our generation blow up the country's future and they simply have decided to not take the same path. We all know what is coming, and until they fix some major issues, there is going to be a very large boom and a lot of people are going to get hurt. I wonder how we would have felt growing up in a country where Wall Street rules and you never get ahead. By the way, let me just mention, what is it? Edward Griffin's book, The Creature from Jekyll Island. Google it. Just trust me here. I wonder how we would have felt growing up in a country where Wall Street rules and you never get ahead unless you are connected in some way. Would we bust our butts to be successful, or would we just want to do enough to just make it? Carl has been talking about this for a lot of years, and every year it seems to get worse and worse, like no one is listening. He has talked about going off the grid for quite a while, and it almost seems like these kids feel the same way. A lot of us felt we sent a message to DC by electing Trump, hoping to change the direction that the country is going in, and again it looks like the swamp is sucking him in too. As a boomer, I am disgusted in what our country has turned into. By the way, that's a thing that is repeated in Grapes of Wrath. What's this country coming to? Not in those words, I forget the exact words, but it's interesting. You know, the funny thing is I only came around that book because this lovely young lady, her brother's girlfriend at some event I was from Oklahoma, and I was just talking about Okies, and jokingly, and she, that just made me think about the Grapes of Wrath. So I picked it up and started reading it, got hooked in. Okay, as a boomer, I am disgusted in what our country has turned into and don't want to contribute to its demise any longer. I've watched Wall Street take over our economy, watched our healthcare destroyed by a socialist dream, and now I'm watching thousands of small business owners closing their doors because people are looking for convenience and large corporations are only interested in jacking their stock prices at any cost. I've watched massive fraud take over the markets with no rule of law to stop it. I understand why these kids don't have an interest in joining the party. We are critical of what they stand for, but they simply are being guided by what they have witnessed growing up, in the worst corruption this country has ever seen. They have grown up at a time when the elites have simply run over the bottom 90% on their way to greater riches. And, you know, I see the Ivy League Wall Street connection. I know what's going on here. Why have any ambition when you were watching your country burn? I think they see something that we didn't at our young age and have decided to simply walk away and find a safe space. I know that when I get up for work, I don't have the drive and the ambition I used to because I now have to work twice as hard to make the same money. These snowflakes are simply not engaging because they don't want to exist the same way. What these kids don't understand is that hiding from reality will only hurt them and not help their future. Giving up and waiting for the government to pay your bills is completely off the rocker in today's environment where the government is already massively broke and won't even be able to support the upcoming boomer generation at retirement. These kids seem to never have been taught the math and simply don't care. I blame this on what they learned under Obama and his entitlement generation. They have been taught that entitlement is a right and hard work is for suckers. That's a line from A Bronx Tale, by the way. Pretty good movie. I'm starting to think the hard work comment is right. We're getting near the end here. And there are many more comments. I just gave you a selection of them. This was a really worthwhile piece. And again, bookmark marketticker.org, and there's a hyphen between market and ticker. I come to this every once in a while, but I barely scratched the surface of all the worthwhile stuff that's on there. One of the last few comments here. I had my millennial nephew over for Easter dinner. We discussed the state of the country and the direction it was going. I told him that when he realized how screwed he was, he might start to wonder how Uncle Lobo would taste with BBQ sauce. Very responsible kid. I'm impressed. He gets it. On the other hand, we have a snowflake at work. The guy thinks that he should get paid the same, get as much vacation, and work on the same type of projects as the guy with 25 years who created and updated all the processes used in the department. He was quiet, frog. He was told that the 25-year guy has worked nights and weekends when things have gone to hell, while he's only been here a little over a year. The message just bounced off his head. Is this the last one? The last one. Thanks for bearing with me if you have. I have to say that I have been having the same thoughts deep down. I didn't realize it until a couple weeks ago that I was encouraging my kids to make different choices. I have been doing so for several years, teaching them to make as little as possible, live at home 4 to 5 years and save, pay cash for a small home, grow your own food, eat right to keep healthy, have several children and devote your time and energies to raising them. Take every damn tax incentive offered, or earn only enough to max out the earned income credit. Starve the beast, keep sharp, pay attention, and keep head low. And on that note, thanks for watching.